Welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco, your personal financial quarterback. Whether you've had years of success in your business or are just starting out, DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office can help you create a vision for your business, life, and family and guide you toward the fulfillment of that goal. As they say, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your virtual family office. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Better than I deserve. How about yourself, Eric?
I love that phrase. Me too. Yeah, this past weekend was sunny and beautiful here, and we're not going to church because church is not convening at this point. We're watching it online and things, but we have what we call journey groups or Bible studies, basically, that we meet every other week normally, and so we've been doing Zoom meetings. But this week we decided to get together in somebody's driveway, and we were all good 10 feet apart at least, still social distancing, but all sitting there, and we're sitting there for maybe an hour and a half, and I'm burned. I'm already burned.
I get it. We had the same type of weather here, so I could see that happening.
Yeah, and my wife laughs at me. She's Hispanic, and so she's like, "How in the world do you get pink that quickly?" I'm like, "I am so white. We've been married 25 years. You have not figured this out yet." She makes fun of me, but I got some color, man. It just happens to be pink. So.
Oh, well, I see. Now I've got the olive skin, being Italian, and I would drive my wife crazy because I'll go out for like 10 minutes, and she's like, "You're tan."
Yeah,
and I'm like, well, hey, when you got it, you got it, right?
Yeah, Matt, I hate people like you. I'm just kidding. I don't. I'm jealous. I'll tell you that. I don't hate you at all. I am so jealous because I go pink, very pink, and then red. And then after red, I get to, it turns into a tan for about a week. And then all of a sudden I slowly fade to white again. So that's
Do you peel?
Sometimes if I burn real bad, then yes, I'll definitely peel, which I hate. And it's just gross. But it's normally, I don't know. Anyway, been my whole life. I guess I just get used to it, right?
That's right. I'll tell you a little hint, coconut oil.
See, my wife's a big proponent of coconut oil. Yep. But I don't think I've ever basted myself in it to go cook myself outside, man.
We were at the beach.
Prepping a turkey.
It does. We were at the beach one time. My son got fried, and I said, "Come here," and we just kind of bathed him in coconut oil, and it's amazing. The burnt went away.
Oh, you mean after a burn? I thought you meant like rub it on to go outside.
No. After a burn, if you get burnt.
Yeah, let's make that clear for all the listeners. Please don't rub yourself in coconut oil, then go bake yourself outside. Because, like I said, that sounds like you're making a turkey. But
that's a whole other story about my parents when I was a kid. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Speaking of, what is this podcast about? Because I know it's not about me cooking outside.
Well, that's true. But, it actually talks about, you had mentioned about, with, not meeting for church and your small, meetings virtually with small groups. And this whole COVID-19 pandemic has really turned everybody's world upside down with, the quarantining, social distancing, business closures. And, we had nice weather here too. And it was amazing. Everybody was out. And I think people are just getting stir crazy.
Yeah.
But it's, one thing that I've noticed out there is that when we have these traumatic events in our lives, it can really be a cause for us to kind of reevaluate our lives. And we can have basically 3 different responses when we go through them. I think the first one is that we might quit and just give up. And, the problem with that is, the first thing is, where are you going to go from there? Yeah, you can quit, but you've got to go somewhere else from there. And then the second thing, and I think a problem when we quit, is that, so what are you going to do when the next event happens? And I think too many times we think these are isolated events, but life is always full of something, some type of trauma or just, life-altering events. They constantly happen. And I think when we get into the habit of quitting, it really doesn't solve the problem because we're going to run into the next one.
Well, and let's face it, all the news that I'm seeing out of the medical community is saying that these things have phase 1 and a phase 2 and possibly a phase 3 or even phase 4. It's not like the COVID-19 thing is just absolutely done and we're all going outside now and enjoying ourselves. They're talking about reopening things, but bottom line is that we could be in for a round 2. And if people don't have the mental fortitude now just to deal with round one, boy, round two is going to be even worse for them.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. And I think that's the danger in anything that we do about quitting or giving up. We've got to continue just to reevaluate, what do we need to do to change? What do we need to do to grow?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the second response that I've seen, and I see this all over social media anymore, is about we become bitter. And we look for who can we blame? Who's at fault? I mean, I think the most frustrating thing for me is, looking on there, and this is from both sides of the aisle. Who are we going to blame for this? Why wasn't there a quicker response? I mean, it's really easy to be the Monday morning quarterback. At some point, we have to kind of accept what's happened out there and then look at ourselves and say, how can we change?
Yeah.
And those are the kind of people that want to blame all the time. I really don't, they want to have a pity party. That's up to them. I really don't want to be a part of that.
Exactly.
But then the third response is that we get better. And I think that's really what I want to kind of focus on today, is about where are some ways that we can look to get better through the lessons that we've learned through this whole COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah. And I think the great minds of any era are the ones that are looking at, okay, either A, this is an opportunity, or B, this is going to necessitate things that we haven't done before. And that the perfect example are different companies that have stepped up and altered what they're manufacturing to fulfill the need. People that have been able to make parts with 3D printers that we didn't think could be made before. But you know what? We're going to try something new because we're in a desperate time. So that calls for a desperate measure, which leads to innovation. And I think
exactly right.
Yeah, the people that are on the positive side of this, instead of just quitting and throwing their hands up going, well, there's nothing we can do. You know what? What can we do? Let's solve this right now. And it's going to be a long-term solution. It's not going to be a quick fix, but all those little steps that people are taking from point A to point B to get there, man, that's very encouraging to me.
That's exactly right. It's interesting you bring that up, because I had 3 examples of people that I know. 2 of them are clients. The first one owns a printing business. So, of course, when everything shut down, there was no need for stationery, business cards, T-shirts, promotional items, those type of things. And they were wondering, what are we going to do here? And the son he found a supplier that was able to get them protective gear, masks, shields, gloves. And so they started marketing those to essential businesses out there and to, workers that needed that type of equipment. So they kind of took a lemon and made lemonade out of it by doing that, kind of saying, let's look at another product line that we can market during this time. And that kind of thinking will permeate into when things do come back to I don't want to ever say normal, because I don't know if we'll ever be in ever be at the way things were. But when things get back to maybe a more normalcy, they'll be able to adapt because they've created that thinking, that process in their minds.
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
I have another one that was a wholesale food business. And again, restaurants are closed, institutions are closed. What they started doing is they started out marketing drive-through grocery pickup. And what's amazing is because the community found out about this, and there were companies that had essential workers that started ordering, lots of food for them. As a matter of fact, they actually had to shut down because they ran out of food.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's the kind of response that they got. But again, it was kind of saying, yeah, this is our core business, but how do we adapt in this environment? And it's been very successful. And because of what they were doing, the community kind of rallied around them.
Yeah, and well, I was just going to say that exact same thing. When I see somebody who is bringing innovation or who is positive, right? That they're being positive in a very negative situation, I'm drawn to that person because they're showing leadership, and I want to support that person. If there's any way that I can, I'm going to support that person because they're the type of people that are moving forward and trying to make the best of every situation. Those are the people I want to surround myself with. I don't want to surround myself with people that are just going to be crying and going, this sucks. I don't want to, this is poor me. You know what?
Yeah.
I can't be around you. I'm sorry, because I don't want to slip into that mentality. I want to be part of the team that's going, okay, what are we going to do? Let's fix this. Let's go. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a lot of what, it's interesting, even before all of this, in my family businesses, when especially working with the next generation, the kids that are coming up, a lot of what I'm trying to help them to do is to start to think more like entrepreneurs. And how can we evolve the business? Yes, your parents built a successful business doing that, but guess what? The world is changing too. How do we make that better? And even in these successful family businesses, a lot of times when the child has gone somewhere else and worked somewhere outside of the business, and they come back maybe 5 years later, they've got a much broader paradigm of the world. And they're better able to go to the parents and say, look, this is what we were doing out here. We could adapt this to our business. And again, you just kind of watch the business evolve out of that. The other one, this was a story I actually heard. I saw it online. It was a woman who was a party planner, and she would organize these parties and she'd rent these tents. Well, of course, everything got canceled. I mean, she did a ton of weddings, and I mean, weddings, are postponed for, at least the celebrations are postponed for, who knows when, maybe, late summer, early fall. But she did find some opportunities to utilize these tents to go set up COVID-19 test sites. So at different medical facilities. Right. So she's been so busy just calling different medical centers, calling different treatment centers. Can we provide these tents for the testing? And so she's been able to have her business thrive even in this kind of environment. So I think that's really one of the first things is how are you going to adapt when an event like this happens? We can't get stuck and just say, woe's me. We have to think about there's always something that we can do to, keep our business moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt, I'll be honest, that begs the question. We know that we have people that have adapted wonderfully to the situation that they're in, or at least adapted the best they can. Right. But let me ask you this. How do you work with clients and how do you work with folks to help them protect themselves for the future, protect themselves as far as their business is concerned, and even maybe their mental health when things like this arise? How do you help people kind of walk through this to prepare themselves?
Well, that's an interesting question, Eric, and there's actually two parts to that. I think the first part is how do they prepare their business? And we touched some of this in podcast 5 about how we start to set up the self-buyout program. But I think one of the key things is that what we need to do is implement a savings program within our business similar to what we do in our personal life. So taking the first 10% or whatever that percentage is that you want of revenue and putting it away in an emergency fund. So when something happens, when you all of a sudden the government says we need to shut down business because of a pandemic, you have funds that at least can kind of carry you until you can get an adequate strategy that's in place. So I think that's a really important thing, and most businesses do not do that, and I think that's a critical thing. My clients that have done it have been able to thrive through this whole pandemic. And even if their capacity has been reduced to a great level, they've still been able to function and, still put food on the table, keep some employees working, and still try to move forward until they can adapt to the situation.
Yeah.
So that's really the first thing, is having that emergency funding available. We also want to have longer term funding available, whether that's through retirement plans, cash balance plans, different non-qualified deferred compensation programs, those type of things for the longer term future, where we can basically ensure that we have control over that situation. If we do need to transition the business, if we need to close, we control the situation. We're not letting outside forces do that.
Yeah, and that's so important because once you give up that control, that's tough.
Yes, exactly. And that's where, again, a lot of business owners get stuck in that. They work, and all of a sudden when that inevitable time comes that they do want to transition, all of a sudden they realize they have no control over it. So we want to try to put as much control in their hands as possible.
Got it.
I think the other thing we got to look at is creating different organizational procedures that are going to protect the employees. Whether it's HR procedures that are going to be in place for implementing plans, a business continuity plan. And that's something that it really has surprised me as I've worked with business owners, is that the vast majority of them don't have some type of continuity plan. If something like this happens, what do we do? What are the next steps?
Yep. And I think that that's a fair question that more and more people are going to be asking of business owners. If they're going to engage whatever the business is. I mean, you as a financial advisor, I'm sure you've gotten that question. So Matt, here's the thing. What happens if, right? I want to make sure that I know that you've taken care of me as a client, or, I know that you take care of your clients as of having this discussion with you. And I'm interested in becoming a client, but what happens if? I want to make sure that I'm taken care of in case something happens to you. Do you have a business continuity plan? I'm sure you've been asked that question. I think this pandemic is going to make people ask that question more and more of the businesses that they're trying to engage with.
Exactly. The funny thing is, Eric, actually, I don't get that question. I'm the one that has to initiate that conversation a lot of times. Yes, it's pretty amazing. And sometimes, we may even go to a seminar and they'll talk about business continuity and they'll just be like, "Oh, I never thought about that." And I'm like, "Well, I've been telling you that for the last 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is." So, sometimes I guess you'll never be a prophet in your own hometown, as the proverb goes. So I think that's really important, and I think that's something that I'm talking to my clients about now. Because we're in this, we're going through this. How are we going to have continuity in the future when something like this happens? Especially like you and I were talking off air, this could be, there's probably going to be another wave, or maybe another 2 waves of this. So how are we going to adapt in those situations?
Yep, absolutely.
The other thing that I want to work with them with is how to control their mental state and just their mindset. I think that's when we're kind of hit with an event like this that's completely out of our control. And, I know a lot of the response by our government leaders can be politicized. And I'm not here to assign blame or anything like that, but I think a lot of them, we've never dealt with anything like this before. So we just try to do the best that we can. But what we've got to do as human beings is figure out, how do I control my own mental state? How do I keep myself in a spirit of abundance when we're going through a situation like this? So I think a lot of that comes down to, I think we need to dig down and what are we putting into our brains? Are we watching the news, which is dragging us down? Or are we, reading articles about success stories that are out there? Are we, reading positive books? Are we, or do we have an adequate meditative life or prayer life? Those type of things. Are we growing spiritually? I think these are really important things that we do. I've actually got a number of clients to just put on their phone reminders, maybe 3, 4, 5 times a day, to just pause. And whether it's, pray for 5 minutes, whether it's meditate for 5 minutes, whether it's pick up a good article and just, that would be inspiring. Any type of those things to keep our mindset at a very high level, because especially now, and especially if we are in service industries, we have to be operating at a high level for our customers and clients because they're relying on us.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of the book series, and again, I'm not promoting a book series necessarily, but Chicken Soup for the Soul. Do you remember those books?
Oh yeah. I've read all of those. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of them out there. And they even had varieties, different types of soup, but chicken soup for the so-and-so souls, chicken soup for this person's soul. And, kind of identifying groups of people that, could be IT professionals, I don't know, but just kind of stories that revolved around positive things that happened and positive things that people were able to do. And I think that's something that we need right now, right? I mean, I think that, like you said, being able to take news in small doses, we want to be educated. We want to get the information that's being put out there. However, very small doses. And then let's find something similar to a Chicken Soup for the Soul type of article or book that we can pick up and just read a positive story. Because I believe that if somebody's not ramping up that book series, there will be a book series that's going to be based off of what's happened during COVID-19 and all the positives that came out of it, all all the things communities and individuals did to help each other get through this time. And I think the stories are going to be absolutely overwhelming and amazing, and will help remind us of what happens when we are positive and we take a positive mental stance and are proactive in trying to get other people to have positive mental stands as well.
Exactly. One of the books I recommend to a number of my business owner clients is the book Power of Broke by Damon Johns, and from Shark Tank. Mm-hmm. And David Johns goes through, he tells his story, but what he does, the bulk of the book is really stories of entrepreneurs that had nothing, or maybe just weren't getting any traction, and how did they create something out of nothing. And they're very short stories, but I want to illustrate to them by having them read this book that there's always a way to figure things out.
Yeah.
And again, those examples can be inspiring to them. But I think all of these things are things we need to do. We need to spend more time. I mean, my coach tells me that, I should devote 10% of my top line revenue to personal development. And that's, people look at that and they say, that can be a big number. Yes, but it's that important. What do they say? The best investment is always in yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's exactly what that's designed to do. So we've got to keep our heads right. We've got to make sure that we're growing in a spiritual sense. We got to make sure that we're growing in our relationships with people. There's a lot of people out there during this whole pandemic that are lonely. Are we just picking up the phone? Sometimes it's just simple things like that we need to do. But these will all help with our mindset.
Yeah. And I would say that if anybody's listening to this right now and you kind of find yourself falling into that category that you're kind of lonely, you're not the only one. And the best thing to overcome that is to reach out to other people. And some people may be super busy and they don't have time to talk to you. Call somebody else. Else, because you will find somebody else that is lonely like you. And then you guys can have a great conversation, not about how lonely you guys are, but find some things in common that you guys can be happy about and joyful about. And you bringing happiness and joy to somebody else, or making somebody else feel less lonely, will come back to you 10 times on how you feel.
Exactly.
I firmly believe that.
Yeah. I mean, and even in today's society, even a quick text to somebody. I mean, I just had last week, I had a friend I was thinking about, and I just texted her, said, hey, I was just thinking about you. How you doing through all this? And all of a sudden I was like, oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you contacted me. We're doing fine. But I haven't really heard from anybody. And just a little text like that can really that can make somebody's day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you know somebody that is maybe not great with technology, it's still okay to send them a letter or a card, right? I mean, we can still do that. The mail's still running. It's safe. It's not going to transmit anything. Send them something, a personally written little card. Just thinking about you, just like you said you did with your friend. Just thinking about you, how you doing during this time. They can't respond through mail necessarily very quickly, but put your phone number in there. Hey, if you want to give me a call, let's chat. Whatever it is. I mean, it's easy to do. It's quick. And man, what's the stamp? 55 cents now? 57 cents?
Exactly.
Something like that.
50 cents, I think.
I
don't know. We're so used to emailing now. Right? I don't even know what the mail, what the stamp
sad
costs.
Is that?
I know, exactly.
I have no idea how much a stamp costs. But it's
Welcome
cheap.
to the
Let's put it
21st
that
century.
way.
Right,
yeah, right.
exactly.
We do know it's cheap to bring some joy and just a smile to somebody's face. And how good would that feel, knowing that you mail out 2 or 3 cards a day to people? That's a great investment in your friendships and your relationships and your own mental health.
Amen. You're exactly right. And you're exactly right. And I think it's just important for us to be doing that all the time. Again, that, like you said, that's going to control. It's when we're serving, we're taking our eyes off ourselves, put them for other people, and we don't dwell on our own problems there.
Perfectly said.
Thank you. The third point I wanted to cover, and what we're going to do is dive into this in a future podcast, is about how do we look at doing business differently in the future. Mm-hmm. And I think there's basically 2 areas that we want to look at. Structurally, how are we going to do business? I think that we look at different opportunities, like from staffing. One of the lessons I think that we are learning from all this is that there is an ability to have workers work remotely, to give them more work-life balance, give them flexibility. One thing, like my wife, when she was working at home, she was like, I can't believe how much less stress I feel. She was working harder than she had when she was in the office, but she knew she could get up, and if she wanted to dust the living room because it was bothering her, she had that flexibility to do that. And I think employers are going to learn that they can actually have a more productive workforce by utilizing technology to give their employees flexibility.
No, I agree 100%. Here's the thing is that my wife is also working from home, and she is putting in hours at multiple times during the day, right? So she's not done at 5 o'clock. But the nice thing is that when she's been dealing with a lot of technology issues with a lot of the folks that she works with, helping them through it, helping, figuring things out, working with IT departments, so on and so forth. But it's maddening when you're on the phone for 2 hours and you're barely making headway because of the technology issues. That can get frustrating. At home, she can walk away and do something, just like you said. She can go outside and weed. She loves to work outside. Mm-hmm. She'll go outside and weed for 10, 15 minutes and come back in and get right back to work. At work, in an office building, you can't do that. You can walk out of your office, but you're still frustrated walking down the hall because, everybody you're walking by has those same technology issues, so, and you're not accomplishing anything else. So I think for mental health, like we were talking about earlier, that's a very huge positive.
Exactly. I think companies and businesses are going to also look at ways that maybe they were trying to do things in-house where they could do them virtually. We talked about in an earlier podcast about the idea of the virtual family office. And what was amazing was a lot of my peers, they would kind of touch base and say, how you doing? Or, we'd be talking about their current situation and how they were struggling. And I would tell them, I said, really nothing's different for me because I'm utilizing technology to be able to conduct business. I've been doing it for 6 years this way. And so I didn't miss a beat. And I think now what's happening is my peers are starting to learn that, boy, we can do virtual meetings, which can be a lot of times much more convenient for the client. It can be it can be much more time effective, both on our standpoint and for the client. And you can, accomplish a lot more things. So it's through something like, an event like this that they're learning how to do that. And I think other companies are going to learn the same lesson from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the other thing is that businesses are going to learn how do we need to adapt just even our core business. It's similar to what we talked about earlier with the businesses that adapted to the current environment. The economy is changing. So to give you an example, one of my clients, they have an advertising company that is very focused on pushing its advertising toward that core consumer. And their core market is auto dealerships. Mm-hmm. Well, what he's finding is that even the car business is changing, that, there's so much overhead in the dealership model. And he and I were just talking about this a couple days ago, where he's saying, I think it's going to end up where people are going to buy cars either direct from manufacturer or through some of these big internal wholesalers like on the web, where you'll basically just order your car. You might go to a dealership type place to maybe test drive, try different features, but eventually you'll be purchasing either direct from manufacturer or direct from a third party. And what he's doing is trying to promote to dealers, we need to anticipate this, and how are we helping them to adapt so that then, again, they will continue to keep advertising with them. So he's helping his clients to look at ways to grow their business in a new environment too. The restaurant business is going to be a great example. I mean, with all of this, a lot of restaurants may have to take tables out because for social spacing, take bar stools out. That's going to affect their overall the volume that they can run through the restaurant at one time. So how are they going to adapt to this environment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all great questions. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and these are all things that we have to look at. So as that personal quarterback for the client, I have to help them to start thinking in this direction and help to guide them, not give them the answers, but my role is to really kind of guide them through this process.
Well, yeah, and I know that you do a ton of research and looking into different ways that business can be done and all the connections that you have. So it's nice for your clients to be able to have somebody bring stuff to the table and say, here are some things that you can look at. Let's talk about these together. And like you said, you're not telling them what to do, but you're able to bring them options and things that'll spark some creativity in them.
Right. No, you're exactly right. That's what I see my role being. I mean, I'm their trusted advisor. to help guide them in that way.
All right. Well, this has been a great podcast today. I know we're running low on time. Do you have any final thoughts for today?
Yeah. Well, as I've been kind of working through this whole COVID-19 pandemic and the situations that business owners are running, I've developed 5 action items that I'm implementing with my clients, and I'd love to share them with anyone who would be interested in them, only again if they would be appropriate for you. So what I'm going to recommend is go to my website. It's dfranvfo.com, and I think we'll probably have a link somewhere in the show notes. And you can just schedule a 20-minute conversation utilizing the schedule and intro call button. It's on the top right-hand side of my website homepage. And we can determine if any or all of these strategies would be of value to you in your situation. So I would encourage everybody, take advantage of it. It's no cost, but it'll give us a chance to chat and see if there's any ways that we might be able to help you.
Yeah, that's a great offer, man. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's 20 minutes of your time. It's free, and it could really change the way you do business in the future. Matt, thank you so much for offering that, and thank you so much for the podcast today.
No problem, Eric. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Always love talking with you, brother. All right, and I want to thank you for tuning in to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Matt comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends, family, and maybe people that work with you in your business so that you guys can start talking about, you know what, maybe we could adapt some of these ideas to what we do and to have a more secure future, because future is unknown. We don't know what's going on, and we've learned through this entire situation that things can change on a dime, and they really did.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, be thinking about that, and be thinking about making that phone call or getting to the web and scheduling that call. It'll be very valuable to you. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Your Business, Your Life podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment, legal, or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or another qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding your business or personal planning. DiFrancesco Financial Concierge, LLC, doing business as DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, is a registered investment advisor. Registration with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission or any state securities authority does not imply a certain level of skill or training.